Oh my word, it is scary. We're starting camp.
Good
All right.
morning. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, good evening. Intense learning starts here. Information management, watch out.
But it's fun.
I'll say, hey everyone, my name is Clive,
Hey, Louis here.
This is Akos.
and today we're going to kick off BIM camp. It's going to be practical, it's going to be quite fast paced, so hold on. And we're going to cover a lot of material. We're going to go through what you can expect in the 6 sessions, and we'll give you a guide as well. We'll give you a map. Let's first kick off about what we experience. Akos, what do you see? Says there that nobody looks at your BIM execution plan. Is that true?
Yeah, that's a topic I wanted to chat with you about since we are here together. So I have a feeling that nobody looks at my execution plan. What do you think?
I think I've had the same thing. And I've done many things in the past, try to make it more concise and try to maybe make it more digital. And I even came up with a one pager one time. And Louis, I was working directly with you, all of these different methods to try and make people look at it and follow it. But it wasn't really that easy. And then what else did you experience?
I think no matter how hard we try to compact everything into one spreadsheet, it just always looks complex. You end up with a bunch of abbreviations and links and references, columns and rows just go on. And no matter how hard we try, it just is always very foreign to those who aren't involved in the creation of it.
Yep, absolutely. And it becomes really tough to check things. So you end up with this spreadsheet spaghetti of lots of different columns and rows and stuff that nobody understands. And then the person that has to check it has one screen open with the spreadsheet and one screen open with the model viewer, one checklist, one tool for the timeline, delivery through a CDE, all of these different places. And it becomes really challenging. And we've all experienced these things. Oh, we've even got this little guy. He looks a bit confused as well. I think he means ISO 19650. And not that we want to burn these tools, Excel and Word, they're fantastic tools. They can be used very well. I use them all the time as well. But when you're looking for structured information management, we're maybe looking for a bit more of a structured approach. So little Jimmy here, he maybe has a point. I'm sure we'll dig into that.
It just kind of goes to say those who aren't involved in the creation of it just sometimes don't pay attention and care about it as much as those that do.
Yep, absolutely. So it feels like there's zero accountability. We create all this great scope, great BIM execution plans, and it really does frustrate you when nobody's listening and nobody's following and nobody's really doing anything. And we saw it being a lot of different reasons, but some of them were that we have disconnected tools. We have lots of different standards, different ways of doing things, different things that people are looking at trying to standardize, and you end up with more standards than one standard. You have problems starting projects, like don't know where to find the templates, trying to put together lots of spreadsheets, and confusing when you've got so many of them in different places and trying to connect them. It becomes unclear who is supposed to do what, and we end up missing project goals. And overall, what we have found is that whether it's BIM or whether it's project management, accountability is missing. And it really is a problem, because if you don't have accountability, you don't have people knowing what their responsibilities are, having it tied into the contract, having a workflow that can enable checking automatically, it becomes a big problem for the project. And that doesn't matter whether it's BIM or whether it's a certificate that needs to be delivered at handover. They're all important things that need to be detailed and tracked. So we said, what if? Imagine if it doesn't have to be this way. What if you don't have that mess of Word files and spreadsheets that look a bit sad, and you don't have to spend hours naming your PDF, and your BIM execution plans don't vanish into this void, and your requirements don't end up in that spreadsheet that nobody really understands. It's a world that we know does exist. It can, and we actually made some of it. So we'd like to share some of that journey and some of the story and some of the tools and some of the resources with you. What if it was a single click and you had all of your templates at your fingertips all the time, and you could get started with that single click? You could have accountability, assign different parts, make it a simple field to fill in using pick lists, using information, and having the ability to share content only when it's ready, and save about 90% of that pain, and have all of your content in the same place. What if you had a way of sourcing information from the same project library, so it looked up exactly what everyone else was doing? And what if you could combine all of those different spreadsheets in a visual, clear, understandable way that also includes the requirements down to the documents that are needed, that master information delivery plan, view with your responsibilities from these are the things that we need to have, and these are the information requirements. And what if all of those things were driven in a way that was a standard, like level of information need? So, for example, understanding a pick list of whether it's parametric and being able to do that in a very simple way. And what if you could have all of that combined with the same format and the same timeline, so you can understand not just what people are doing, but if it's integrated with a timeline, then you can understand when people are supposed to be doing things. And even though in my example, I've got 4-day tasks for everything, it's very quick. You can add dependencies and understand the dependencies between tasks to really clearly and quickly get a handle on what has to happen when. And what if it's combined with AI that can create you a starting point for the checklists? What are the conditions of satisfaction that we need? How we can describe something more clearly? And what if it's in a structured way so that you can not just create it in a way that humans can understand, but what if you created a machine readable information delivery specification that other tools could understand? And that structured data could also be used in automatically verifying your deliverables so that when teams are submitting their work, you can see whether they have done what was put into that contract or not. And what if you actually had everything in the same place so that you could have a clever way of automatically naming your files so you don't spend all of that time doing it, and you actually have them automatically filtered into folders so that you don't have to spend your time managing folder structures as well. All of that workflow is automated, and it's really the same that you know today, but better and integrated and a lot more efficient and streamlined. We love the fact that it helps teams with this quote at the bottom. It's a great thing because it means it's easier for the auditors and it's easier for your teams if you are following a structured workflow as well. We've got loads of resources and loads of case studies that we are going to share with you. They range from understanding how to take all of those spreadsheets and put them into a structured database to refining the workflows. And this one is an example of saving time and following a clash avoidance workflow to have fewer clashes in the model. So it's real practical work. It's not just software, it's structure, and it actually works. But how does it work? What are we going to go through in detail? How are we going to actually understand how to actually achieve these things? Well, that's what camp is for. And we're going to start with an orientation on the guide, 4 key sessions that we're going to take you through. And we're going to give you a download link for this diagram as well. Along the top, you've got the 8 different steps through the ISO 19650. If you can see them, it starts with assessment and need, going through tendering, so bidding and responses and appointments, so you're contracting, mobilizing, producing information, delivering and learning from it as you close out. We've grouped these into the first set, which is planning. This is kind of where 90% of the problems start, so a lot of focus here. And then session 2 is about contracting. And really, this is why Akosh's BIM execution plan never got read, maybe, because it wasn't part of the contract. It wasn't important. Then the third one is tracking. And this is really where we all get our gray hair from, and how project managers, if you actually have a system that's connected to the contract requirements and automatically tracked, it might save us some of our worry and stress. And then the last one is about handover. And that's really one of the things that we miss until the end, until handover day. But what we're going to do is take you through 4 main sessions that really focus on each one of these, defining actionable information requirements, collaborative contracting. It's actually not just a contract agreement, it's a collaborative agreement. We're talking about CDE setup and managing files and metadata and really making it a lot easier to track and control in the third one. And then the handover is about verifying and automatically making that part of the workflow. Through all of this, to fill in those steps, we have the resources that we'll be talking about along the top. So these are all of the documents and workflow steps, the production of planning and contracting and tracking information. These are really important no matter whether you're following an ISO 19650 workflow or not. Then along the bottom, we will introduce all of the individual steps and we'll really take a detailed look about how to actually achieve them. There's a nice key and also links on this download for the free certified training and also a bunch of templates as well. So Akash, tell us more about what you're seeing in those early planning phases.
Well, this is my slide.
Oh,
It's okay.
Louis, I should have looked at the beard color.
Yeah.
Then I would have got it.
It's my sad face here. Yeah, so without a solid planning system, projects will unravel right at the start. Teams may have outdated templates, no real instructions on what needs to be completed, and everyone interprets things just a little bit differently. Roles and responsibilities are unclear, and without clear approval processes, you're left chasing input or waiting on decisions. The whole process becomes a ton of administration work. No one really has time to manage that.
Yep. And you're sort of seeing, if I click the last one, yeah.
It's just tough. Usually falls on one person, right? And so it really is a collaborative workflow. And if it falls on one person, then it just feels like there is no time at all for it.
Yep. Suffocating was the word I was looking for.
Okay.
And it's not productive. So what are you going to show us?
For the first of the 4 sessions, we will show how to get team input, define those responsibilities across multiple documents. We'll show you how teams can work with external contributors to create and finalize EIRs, pre-BIM execution plans together, and assign responsibilities with live approvals all in one place. Plus, you'll see how AI can speed up the processes when building out things like responsibility matrices or MIDPs, all while staying aligned with ISO 19650 if you're following those standards. It's really about making this complex part of the workflow way more manageable. So, Clive, why don't you give them a little sneak peek, yeah?
Give it a whirl. Let's do that. So if we were to jump into Planoly and create a new project, what we're presented with at the starting point is all of your templates. So on the left-hand side, there's always this template library that gives you a head start. And if I'm creating an EIR, what we're really trying to do is make that process easier and more accountable. And within each of these document sections, you can see that some of the fields are being driven by smart fields. We'll talk really in depth about how these are going to power your workflow and how you can use things to really quickly complete document data and make sure that that's completed across all of the different documents that you're working on. But I think one of the key things is accountability. So if I was working on this project with a number of other people, I would be able to assign these to people, give them certain permissions and edit rights and access. And that's really where these editing permissions come in. We can actually create teams that we call prospective teams and bring them into this workflow with different roles and permissions. We're going to go through all of this about how you can set this up for success on your project, how you can start using these documents. And then as you go into a scoping process, you can start to define, for example, asset information requirements using the library, something that we want to specify in our project with certain requirements. We could just drag and drop these in. So I could just drag them from the left into the right. But if we wanted to just start from scratch and maybe there's a row that's a pump, again, we're going to show you how all of these different tools and different connections, like this one, the Building Smart Data Dictionary, can really help you to set this up for success. And by bringing this in, I can also see that it's bringing in things like the classification code. And then I can start to define my requirements in my grid. And inside of here, if I was to, let me kick this one off so that we can start by trying to create using AI a heat source pump system. And then as we start to define what those requirements are, maybe we're looking for specific geometry, maybe we're looking for a nice description. And this is where we can start to use what we've already done and start to kick things off, make it easier. Obviously, we can modify these things. Maybe there are conditions of satisfaction that we can start doing. And as we start putting these in, and then you can see here, we've had an AI image created for this object. And we can then also start to add information requirements. Maybe there are the power requirements, for example, that we're looking for. And this will, again, we'll search the Building Smart Data Dictionary. And if I'm looking for the apparent power, let's say, this can be added. And then maybe there's another warranty piece of information that we're looking for. And maybe it is the warranty start date. And as we're adding these pieces of information, we can build out even more tasks in here to define the requirements and really make it clear. But inside of here, we now have our container of information requirements all linked back to the standards, all following exactly the naming conventions so that it can be really clear. And we can assign responsibilities throughout that to those prospective teams. So what we're doing in this first session is helping to establish the right framework of standards and be able to define exactly what the requirements are for those appointing parties, for the owners, and really helping them to define what's required. That was number one. Akash, tell us more about what we're going to see in the contracting phase, the second episode.
Right. So unfortunately, we are seeing some challenges when it comes to contracting as well. So way too many cases. We made a survey a couple of years ago, but we still heard that there are no clear purposes and BIM goals defined. Hearing it way too many times that I need LOD 500 with all the COBie parameters that are possible. Of course, that's not going to be a great hub to contract for BIM. Then requirements, as we can see, are pretty much unstructured and unclear, just like the timeline expectations. So not only what we need, but when we need, that is not communicated clearly. And there is no approval workflow either. So approvals can happen in emails, in even some phone calls and chats. So we have way too many channels, which doesn't give us the golden thread of decision making and approval making. We are typically using spreadsheets, which again is a beautiful tool, the best friend of an engineer, but it is also true that only that person understands the content who put it together. So it's not exactly meant for collaboration. And well, we also have to admit that BIM is very rarely contractual. It is not contracted properly. And ideas is, even if we are talking about it, it's typically an additional task. So the machine readable version of a contract has to be put together as a separate task, which doesn't have the process.
Yeah. And it all ends up in this unstructured set of requirements and not really clear who is supposed to do it. And if it's not clear, it's unlikely that it will get done. So what are we going to see in the contracting part?
Yeah, on the positive side of things, we will bring some collaboration to the table. So how can we, as the lead appointed parties, work together as a team to really answer and create a response for that tender requirement? So how can we collaborate together in an online environment instead of sending back and forth PDF documents, and enrich the agreements to really understand what the goals are and targets are and how we are going to get that together, which in the end leads to selecting a lead appointed party, contracting, appointing, creating an agreement with the teams who we want to work with, which goes into the second phase of further detailing our execution planning, post-appointment, post-contract execution planning, further developing the responsibility matrices together as a team in a collaborative way, and then adding more and more to it as ISO requires, or if we are not following the ISO standard necessarily by the book, still it's a logical workflow to add the risk register and the mobilization plan, how we are going to move ahead. Of course, in this case, AI is going to be a great help, as we've already seen in the previous demo, to speed up things and just make it more and more effective. And even in a BIM project, we are going to talk about not only information requirements and modeling content, but surrounding documentation. And even in a BIM project, we will need so many things which are not in the BIM. So how can we request those pieces of information, those documents? That's going to be a big topic. And then, of course, how in time we can deliver these, what are the major milestones, what are the in-between smaller milestones, and how disciplines depend on each other, what are the durations, and so on. And looking at it as a whole, but then being able to break it down into smaller packages, work packages, so we can even contract for it, filter down the responsibilities, who is responsible for what, creating a beautiful output if needed to, creating a nice document that is easy to understand, but also attaching a machine readable format to that, following the IDS standard, and sign it electronically to have a formal green line. And that is going to mean the collaborative agreement creation process.
Wow, I thought there was a lot in the planning part. That's a lot as well. So the contracting, it's about collaboration and it's about definition of responsibilities and being able to get somebody actually contracted for it. I definitely want to share a bit more, but yeah, basically what we're going to be doing is not just having this grid view, but also we're going to have a timeline view of these tasks. We're going to be able to assign them to teams and team members. So really a lot more quickly to define who's responsible for what. But then as we go through this, we're going to build up teams where they're prospective teams or they're actually appointed teams. And as we go through and start to collaborate on the documents, we're going to have permissions. So we can have certain teams accessing certain documents, certain resources. Maybe certain things aren't actually accessible. We're going to see who is going to be responsible and what's authorized for use. We're going to really be able to key in on that. And then on the scoping side of things, we're then also going to start to be able to see things like these tasks where somebody's saying this is completed, and maybe I want to mention one of the team members and ask them about it. They will get a notification. All of these parts in that workflow is really important, really key. And obviously building out the timeline, but then we'll start to get into the verification only when we have created requirements in a form that can be part of the contract. So what we would do is take all of this content. Instead of you having to manually do all these things, I would want to create something that's got a cover page. It's got the brief and the exchange information requirements. It's got a timeline. It's got the grid of information. It's got the details. And I want to filter it maybe for just one team for the mechanical contractor. And then I would be able to see this as a contract right the way through down to those detailed requirements and the grid of requirements and everything that we've just agreed to. And it's all hyperlinked and it's all created for us. And every time I create one of these, it's then stored in our file manager. So everything is then automatically available for a signature and so on. So that's contracting. That's what we'll see second. Louis, what do we see third about tracking?
Well, getting to the contract isn't just the end, right? It's just the beginning of the next phase. So without a workflow that helps you track these documents and tasks, it won't take long for things to fall apart. Tasks end up getting dropped, file names get messy, and no one's quite sure how to upload the latest version and or where that is. Teams wind up managing checklists in several different places, and while those IDPs or LOD matrices or responsibilities may exist somewhere, how do you know who's really even following them, or better yet, checking them? So most teams feel like they're reinventing this whole workflow on every project. So in this session, we're going to show you how to finally break that cycle and give you a really consistent workflow, a seamless workflow that can get everyone involved so that you can be successful in making sure that all that work you put in those contracts get executed.
Great. Yep. So the tracking, you'll see all of these different steps from setting up a common data environment to house everything, to protect everything. What else will we see?
In this session, we'll cover how to connect your CDEs, define naming conventions, set up folder structures, and clearly outline export requirements from the start. We'll even share a Revit add-on to export this information easily and implement that content inside of models directly. We'll also walk through how teams can consistently upload documents with naming structures, assign and track tasks in a Kanban board, and even run automated model checks within the Verify module. So whether you're managing a responsibility matrix, MIDPs, or verifying information requirements against a model, this session is all about cutting through some of the what we call BIM hell and creating a clear, repeatable process for not just this project, but the next.
Very cool. So we will see a bunch of things, but related to setting up a CDE and being able to understand, yeah, you're going to have lots of files. You're going to have lots of things that are going to be reviewed and signed and in review and approved. But then you're going to want to be able to automatically not just name these, but also store them and filter them into folders, manage that workflow really seamlessly, and package it up into pieces that can be then automatically checked. So there's a bunch of different things in here. We're going to show you an add-on that takes all of the information requirements and puts them into Revit, for example. We're going to show you how you can integrate this workflow into other tools like ArchiCAD and using Celibri potentially for checking if you're already doing that, using Autodesk Construction Cloud, using IFC, upload, download, Navisworks, DWG, all a whole bunch of different things, IFC files, right the way through that process. So that will be the third session. But let's talk about the handover. This is the one that gets forgotten about a lot. Akos, tell us more about the handover challenges.
Right. So when we are handing over something, of course, we want to make sure that it's actually good. It meets the contractual requirement. In order to do that, in many cases nowadays, we will be doing manual model checking. We all know those workstations with the two huge screens and you don't see the BIM manager behind because trying to match a spreadsheet with a model. So that's time consuming. That's something to work on. And then in many cases, well, it leads to endless issue tracking because in many cases, the receiving end is the one who actually finds the problems. And then they have to report it back to the source and they have to fix the issue issues. So an issue tracking long cycle just starts. The other thing is that we are lacking transparency. We have to frequently ask for status updates if we want to know where we are at with the project. And we all know that the daily report, weekly report, monthly report, it's just chasing all those reports. I mentioned earlier the lack of decision making or golden thread. We have to come back to that again and again because it just leads to disputes months later. If I want to pick on one deliverable, putting together, for example, a Kobe sheet, we all know how time consuming that is. And the problem is, in general, is that we are learning a lot on the project because every project is a little bit different. And how could we incorporate into a general learning and put our processes on a continuous learning path? That's a challenge.
Love it. Yep. So we'll be looking at handover and completing everything from the checklists through to archiving a project. But the main thing you just keyed in on is lessons learned. So you mentioned earlier about the golden thread of information. If you're able to define your requirements, have them in a machine readable, having human readable, having them contracted, have them right the way through that whole process, you can understand what's happened to it and learn from it and improve your next project rather than, as we tend to do, run away and hide at the end of the project. We actually get a chance to bring that right the way through. So yeah, what will we see in the actual handover part?
First of all, we will understand clearly what the requirements were and whether we met the requirements. So accountability and linking requirements to tasks and status those tasks. So we will see exactly how, for example, documents uploaded go through different statuses till a full completion and acceptance of those deliverables. Automating model checking, so we immediately see the results of the qualities of the model. And of course, it's also important to mention that it's not only automated, but autonomous as well. So the sending end can perform their quality check. So the receiving end, the ones who are receiving the models, they would only see models which are actually completed and verified from a quality perspective because it goes through the sending parties' quality checking processes. And everything is automatically going to be overseen, managed from a statusing perspective. So we don't have to ask for status reports because everything is going to be just transparently shown in a very simple card view. So seeing the status is how we are progressing. Looking into something like, for example, automating a Kobe sheet and how it goes into FM systems. But as you mentioned earlier as well, it is really important to how we can learn from this project, how we can see what was a deviation from our standard processes, and maybe we have to improve and update our templates and processes accordingly. That's something that the entire organization can benefit from, and the next projects will take these learnings. That's what it's about.
Love it. So in the fourth step, we're going to be looking at how we can take those structured requirements and then understand if somebody says that I've completed these, I can then go in and actually see, well, it says you're only 84% complete. And I can see that there are 95 items here that do not have the pressure drop required as part of your contract. Therefore, I am not going to give you this payment, or I'm not going to verify this task. This whole workflow is completely customizable. We'll show you how you can go about this. But the principle is that you're learning from this, and everything that you create in here can then be managed. And we'll talk about the scoping and the concept of an unscoped task, something that's created on the project as you go, something that then can be reviewed and refined later on. So that will be the fourth step. But now I hear you say, what now? What do we do now? Well, there's a lot that you can do. First of all, we're going to give you your download link to download the camp guide so that you can understand where we will be. You might be involved in one or more parts of this, but you can dig into all of them. I think that it's always more helpful if you understand a lot of what everyone else is doing in the workflow so that you can plan your work better as well. Go to the training page. We have certified information manager training that starts from the basics, goes through advanced, expert, and then really digging in. For the expert, it's the ISO 19650 workflow for personally understanding. And then also a checklist and a certification readiness. We give you what you need to do to become ISO 19650 ready and what the gaps might be and how to fill them. We have the digital troublemaker, you get a business case, and we have soon releasing the practitioner, which is so much detail into the steps and how to complete every single one of these steps. So they're all there for you. They're all free of charge. They're all on that page. Go to plannerly.com/training and share with us what else you would like to learn about. We would love to produce more content that would be useful for you guys. This has been your orientation for camp. And the next session will be about planning, how to define actionable information requirements, something that can not just get stuffed into a contract, but something that people can clearly understand and they become a collaborative agreement rather than just a PDF that nobody reads until it's too late. Then we'll talk about actually how to put it into a contract, the structure of it and smart contracts. Then we talk about tracking, mainly for CDE. And then we talk about automation for handover and learning and lessons learned, etc. And then we'll have a final graduation, the 6th session. We'll have 4 core sessions, and then the last one will be graduations. We like having fun here. I am really excited because it's really a lot of that body of work that we've been working on for the last 8 years and kind of coming together to say that there's a lot in this workflow, but there's a lot that's necessary to create the requirement, be able to manage it, track it, control it, validate it, verify that that whole workflow is all integrated, is all connected. And what we suffered from when we were BIM managers, architects, teams that, project management. I'm a civil engineer. Louis is an architect. Akash was an architect. And we've been basically through this ringer and it's been painful for us. And that's why we're sitting here today. We're not saying that we've got all the solutions, but we do have a lot of them. And we're really excited to have your input. That's how we build, launch, and grow. That's how we really develop a platform that's more and more useful for teams around the world. So if you have input, please email us all. You can connect with us directly with our first name at plannerly.com. And you can also book a meeting, whether you want to chat with us about better information management or whether you want to dig into some of these solutions. We would love to share more. We absolutely love nerding out about this stuff. We will see you in the next one. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye for now. Bye.